Hello there, you're welcome to Hillcop TV. So this week there is this conference, the Russia African conference going on, and the Russian president Vladimir Putin has spoken, and I want you to of course listen to some of the speeches that he made, and then we will come back to share our views on this development.
Russia agreed to participate in the deal, taking into account the obligations contained in it that illegitimate obstacles to the supply of our grain and fertilizers to world markets would be removed. I want to tell you that, above all, this is about helping the poorest countries. In fact, nothing happened from what we discussed and what we were promised. No terms of the deal regarding the withdrawal of sanctions on Russian exports of grain and fertilizers to world markets were fulfilled. None. Obstacles were also raised for our donation of fertilizers to the poorest countries in need. Of the 262,000 tons of such fertilizers blocked in European ports, only 2 batches were sent. 20,000 tons in total to Malawi and 34,000 tons to Kenya. The rest remained in the hands of the Europeans. This is despite the fact that it was a purely humanitarian action, which, in principle, should not be subject to any sanctions. Our country is able to replace Ukrainian grain both commercially and in the form of free assistance to the most needy African countries. Moreover, this year we again expect a record harvest. In the next 3-4 months, we will be ready to provide free of charge to Burkina Faso, Zimbabwe, Mali, Somalia, Central African Republic, Eritrea, from 25 to 50,000 tons of grain to each. We will also provide free delivery of these products.
Vladimir Putin talked about how last year trade turnover between Russia and the African continent rose to $80 billion, which was a whopping 1/3 increase from the previous year. And he also talked about how despite Western sanctions, Russia is still supplying and is going to supply Africa with food, despite these Western sanctions. He said that it's pretty hypocritical of the West, actually, to accuse Russia of trying to threaten world food insecurity when it's actually Western sanctions that are making it more difficult for Russian food to make it to the African continent. Vladimir Putin also said that Russia is determined to see that Africa not only becomes completely food secure, but becomes a continent that ends up exporting food. Now, it's not only connected to food that Russia is looking to further cooperate with the African continent as well. He spoke about a number of current projects and future project ideas for cooperation in the spheres of energy as well as in healthcare, because Russia is also doing a lot to control the spread of contagious diseases on the African continent as well. But one thing the Russian president also mentioned is that to achieve all of these goals and to continue the development of this mutually beneficial partnership between Russia and the African continent, both parties involved need to start undergoing international transactions using national currencies.
It is important to vigorously switch to national currencies, including the ruble, in financial settlements of trade transactions. In this regard, we are ready to work with African countries to develop their financial infrastructure, to connect banking institutions to the financial messaging system created in Russia, which makes it possible to create cross-border payments independently of some of the Western systems that exist today and impose restrictions. This will contribute to improving the sustainability, predictability and security of mutual trade exchanges. We will offer our African partners the lifting of restrictions. I am convinced that such comprehensive cooperation will allow us to increase our qualitative ties with Africa.
Now, the last sphere of probably that is essential to the maintenance of African sovereignty that Vladimir Putin mentioned, that I want to mention as well, is probably Russia's offer to African students to study in the Russian Federation so that Russia can share its expertise and knowledge with African experts who are going to go back to their home countries and make them a better place. Almost 35,000 African students are now studying in the Russian Federation to get that sort of expertise, and the Russian president promised that these quotas are going to be increasing as time goes on, and they already have been increasing significantly. So given all those areas of cooperation between Russia and the African continent, it looks like there's a bright future ahead of relations between those two parties.
So you heard the Russian president giving the reasons why his country decided to pull out from the deal of course, the grain supply deal, mainly because the West did not keep their part of the contract by removing all the sanctions that they had put on, of course, Russian institutions. But of course, Russia is thinking about Africa, and I think that this is almost like the scramble for Africa, and this is almost like, of course, the Cold War. I feel like now, as you heard him, they're going to give free greens, free of charge, free of charge. Free, the word is free because they're not going to pay. It means that initially African countries were buying these greens, 25 tons. Now he says that we are going to give to them freely, poorest countries in Africa, free from 25 to 50 tons of grain. That's a lot, 100%. So I think that when you look at the offer that, of course, Russia is giving to Africans and African, of course, leaders, I believe that it's a good offer that African leaders should take. Even if, I mean, of course, somebody will argue that yes, they also have their own, of course, national interest and foreign policy. Yeah, but then looking at the offer that, of course, Russia is presenting to African countries as well as that of the West, when you compare the two, I think that, of course, that of the Russia is more, of course, beneficial to African countries than the West. And I think that it's going to go a long way. But I also think that our leaders should not also be only interested in the grain. I think they should also put of course, forward to Russia to also help, with equipment and, of course, technology, because we can grow some of these grains here in Africa, but because we don't have the equipment, to do it on a larger scale, so it's becoming like almost we are importing. So I think that our leaders should also put to Putin that, of course, Russia should also assist, African countries to grow some of these items or grain, just to support, because we can't always be begging, going to beg like that. Let's hear your view in the comment section, and what you think about the African Russian, alliance coming on. Do not forget to subscribe to our channel.